What I wish I knew before nursing. What is up, Healthcare Squad? Logan here with Healthcare Stress Relief. In this video, I'm going to be covering what I wish I knew before I entered the field of nursing. And I know in a lot of my videos, I am talking about mental health in nursing, stress, burnout, and to some of you, it may be seen as very negative, but I do want this channel to be a place where the truth is exposed and where people do hear the nuances and the things that people aren't talking about in healthcare. So without further ado, let's dive in. The first thing about nursing is the scheduling. I didn't really understand it, not even in nursing school. Your schedule as a nursing student is pretty chaotic, but as a nurse, it can be even more so. But the coolest thing about being a nurse is the flexibility. Now, it's a double-edged sword because on one hand, without taking any PTO, you can go on vacation. Once a month, I would go to a new country or a new state, which in most careers, you would never be able to do that. And I wasn't even a travel nurse. So I would basically be able to stack my schedule, basically sandwich my days so that I could work a lot in a row. And then I'd have nearly 14 days off without taking any PTO. And I would go on vacation. And that's basically how I enjoyed myself more on my times off. I would go and travel and go to places like this. Now, on the contrary, the schedule is crazy. If you are a parent, it can be really, really stressful because you never really have a consistent schedule, and our bodies really love consistency. There's no Monday through Friday. There's no 9 to 5, which to some people who join the career, it's awesome because it's not like standard society. But what can be really hard is you have gatherings with friends and weddings and all these events that are going on, and you have to work the weekends sometimes, and you have to work holidays. And this can make it hard, let alone you're working 12-hour shifts. Many people will say, why are you complaining to be a nurse? You only work 3 days a week. Well, they don't factor in that you're working 12 hours a day, and that's really hard on your body. And you pretty much deserve those 4 days off. On that first day of those 4 days, you're usually pretty darn exhausted. So it very much is a double-edged sword. Another big topic that wasn't really discussed in nursing school, they talked about it a little bit, but the stress levels. I was told that it is a stressful career and on some days you couldn't get paid enough for what you do, but you don't really understand how stressful the career is until you start to feel it, until you start to feel burnt out, until you have had a really, really stressful assignment with crazy patients, crazy family members, and seeing people die. And let alone, our bodies are not really meant to work on adrenaline for so long. In healthcare, a really crazy thing is the amount of adrenaline that's going into your body, especially if you're in critical care or the emergency department. You have a huge task at hand to keep people alive. That's already stressful enough. You put on top of that the continuous multitasking that goes on. Our brains are not designed to do this much multitasking. Running to get a bedpan, cleaning up a patient, going to get more wipes, going to the med room, forgetting a med, having to call pharmacy taking too long, going back to another patient, having to call pharmacy again because they messed up in the EMR. Sorry, pharmacy, I'm not saying that you guys mess up all the time, but this kind of stuff makes the mind crazy. And our minds, it crave presence and relaxation. And when you're working 12 hours, 3 days a week, it is far from that. And cortisol, high cortisol levels, researchers have done tests and healthcare workers have higher cortisol levels. Higher cortisol levels are associated with decreased longevity, not something that they tell you in nursing school. And this is why I started this company, Healthcare Stress Relief, to help healthcare workers navigate stress, burnout, compassion fatigue, all things that can cause tremendous pain, a tremendous amount of more stress on the mind, and a feeling like, why did I get into this career? And if you're interested in getting out of that and moving to a space of vitality, to a space of freedom within yourself and within the places that you work, then go ahead and feel free to message me on Instagram and we can have a discussion there. Another big thing I wish I knew before nursing was the amount of death I was going to see. And some of you are going to say, well, you signed up for the ICU, you chose it. And yes, you're right, but you see death immediately when you start the profession. Like when you are in an anatomy class, you see a cadaver. And that didn't really have an effect on me, but when I started working with patients, I saw these human beings dying while I'm working with them. It's really hard. And for me, I was a very compassionate nurse. And some of you will say you shouldn't have had that much compassion, but to me, that's how I wanted to work. And it definitely did contribute to my burnout, but I felt that I gave my patients really good care because I was very compassionate. And I know there are some of you that can relate to that. Now, for those of you who are going to face death, I have a video on death here. You can check that out. From what I've learned, death is something that we all have to go through. None of us get out alive. It's a topic that should be talked about more in nursing school. And I want you guys to try and step into more of a relationship with death. It may sound really weird to have a relationship with something that's so unknown, but the more you can embrace it, that it's going to happen to you, that it's going to happen to your patients, the more compassion you can give to these patients. Because if I'm dying in a hospital bed, I want somebody who understands the fears and the pains that I'm about to go through. And you won't necessarily understand it until you go through it yourself, but you can empathize with somebody and you can tell them it's going to be okay. And you can give them hope that maybe something's waiting for them on the other side, whatever your values and beliefs are. But people, when they're dying, I never was taught how to really deal with it, and so I kind of ran away from it. It was really uncomfortable for me, and when family members in the ICU were having all these questions about it, I didn't know anything. So if you are going into a specialty that's going to be heavily versed in seeing people die, I would highly recommend learning more about death and embracing the subject, because it will help you so much be able to cope with all this stress and not get too emotional when death does come up. Another thing I wish I knew about nursing before I started was the amount of work. Yes, it's hard from the start in school, but that multitasking that I talked about earlier, the amount of death, the amount of people calling you. You are a secretary, you are a scientist, you are an advocate, you're a lawyer, you're a case manager, you're a social worker, you are a psychologist. You are so many things. You ultimately have the most responsible roles as a patient advocate. You have to network with every single modality: RT, speech pathology, PT, OT, doctors. You have to be able to communicate with them. You have to be able to be a leader. You have to be able to do it in a way that's not rude. You have to be able to delegate. You have to be able to handle communication situations. And bam, the stresses are high in healthcare. There's bullying going on. There's toxicity. Another thing I wish I knew before starting the career was the amount of people who would be unhappy with the career and so stressed out. And there's not enough people teaching stress management techniques to healthcare workers. There's not enough people really pushing for policy change within the healthcare institutions. What kind of family member wants to have a nurse or a doctor who's burnt out? The care is going to be substandard. And honestly, to the hospital institutions out there, you are losing so much money. There's so much money on the table that you're losing because you're not investing in your healthcare workers. And in the subject of bullying and toxicity, what I wish I really knew was assertiveness. Assertiveness is the middle ground between being passive and being aggressive. It's a very nice middle ground to have. You can tell people how you really feel, and it doesn't come off as aggressive, and you are showing them your needs and your boundaries. This is so important in healthcare because it's a high form of communication that not many people have. I wish I had it more with doctors who disrespected me, with nurses who would run away from helping, and nurses who were rude to me and tried to bully me. I wish I knew this stuff beforehand. Assertiveness is so important, and it's something we cover in the Bye Bye Burnout program. If that interests you at all, there is a link below. Another thing I wish I knew, I kind of knew it, but it's a gross profession. And most nurses, they don't like the sounds of secretions from the endotracheal tube. You got to clean up a lot of diarrhea. A lot of shit goes down in the ICU and the ED and med surg everywhere. Watch out for the C. diff. There is a lot of gross stuff. I was okay with going into a gross profession. I'm still okay with it. Nothing really grosses me out. But those of you who are considering jumping into the field and you get queasy at this kind of stuff, it can be really hard. You can, of course, specialize in something different, but when you go through nursing school, you're going to have to deal with all of this stuff, and it's pretty gross to people who aren't weird like me. And finally, the number one thing I wish I knew was the amount of different personalities and people I would see. It was a reason that attracted me into the profession because I love people and I love seeing all walks of life. But what's really difficult is when you start to see people who have gone through so much trauma and so much pain, especially the homeless population and people who have addictive personalities. It can be really hard seeing these kinds of people that you would walk across the street to avoid in public, and you see them every day. If you are a firefighter, emergency worker, anything among the front lines, you are going to see so many people, and it's going to be coming at such a rapid pace every day. You're going to see tons of patients, tons of people that don't take care of themselves. They have a victim mentality. They are going through a lot of suffering, and you're going to be the brunt of it. And it makes your job really hard because you got in to help people, and then the people that you're helping actually are mad at you because they have so much pain and so much stuff that they've suppressed throughout their life that they take it out all on you. And I have seen family members blame nurses who've done nothing wrong because they can't handle the death or the prognosis of a family member, and it is a really tough career. With all that being said, I will wrap this up with nursing is a super versatile profession. What I just described is bedside based for the most part, and there are so many avenues within the nursing career. You can transition from the bedside if it's not working for you. If you're a nursing student watching this and I just freaked you the F out, have no fear. It all depends on why you're getting into the profession. If you're getting into it for the money, then a lot of these things, if you can't cope with them, it's going to be really hard for you. If you're getting into it because there's some higher purpose, I'm just giving you all of these tips to better prepare you so you can be a stronger healthcare provider, because these aren't things that I was told about. And there were some lectures on self-care and stuff like this in my nursing program, but you don't really take it seriously. So that's why I'm giving it to you so bluntly, because these are the things I wish I knew, and I'm giving this to you to help you navigate through your career. And if you liked this video, go ahead and check out this video on nurse burnout. It's going to give you more information on what burnout is like as a nurse and how to navigate it. Check it out. Stay strong, Healthcare Squad. Talk to you later.